Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the New Bremen Solar Virtual Community Meeting. My name is Neely Kelly, and I am the Community Relations Program Manager for AES, and I'm based in Rochester, New York. And we are very grateful you have taken the time out of your evenings to join us to learn more about this project. Next slide, please. A few housekeeping items. The meeting will last 1 hour. Please submit any questions in the Zoom Q&A. You'll see that at the bottom of the slide, green arrow. And if for some reason you can't access the Q&A feature, please submit questions via email to newbremensolar@aes.com. We will be monitoring this email throughout the evening. And I will say we had a few questions come in this week in advance of this webinar, and we feel we've addressed them in the presentation. But if you don't feel they are, by the time we get to Q&A, please submit them, any follow-up questions in the Q&A. Use the live transcript feature to view closed captions, the blue arrow at the bottom of the slide. We are recording this meeting, and it will be made available on the project website, along with the presentation slides and a transcript of the Q&A. Next slide, please. The purpose of today's virtual community meeting is to introduce AES to the New Bremen community, present project information and updates, provide information on the New York State 94C permitting process, inform the community about next steps in project development and how you can get involved, and fulfill the public engagement component of 94C. Due to the persisting COVID crisis, we are unable to hold an in-person community meeting for the safety of our team and the community, but we do look forward to engaging with you in person when it is safe to do so. Next slide, please. Here are your panelists and presenters for the evening. And now I will turn it over to Mike Farrell. Mike.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Mike Farrell. I'm a director leading the development in New York for AES Clean Energy. Next slide, please. So today's virtual community meeting, we'll talk a bit about AES. There's been a lot of changes in acronyms and ownership, and so we'll go through that. Talk a bit about the New Bremen solar project, a bit of the New York State regulatory review, which will include 94C, community interest topics and study updates, and then obviously Q&A, as Neely mentioned. Next slide, please. Okay, so you may be a little bit confused about kind of who owns the project and the development of the project ownership structure. So originally this project was developed by a company called Geronimo. Geronimo was bought by National Grid. National Grid then changed the name to National Grid Renewables. And then S-Power bought the project, and then S-Power merged into AES. So to add a little bit of clarity on that, and we know it's a bit confusing, and we're all still getting our heads around it as well. S-Power was previously owned 50% by AES and Alberta Investment Management Corporation. It was a 50-50 joint ownership. Since that time, AES increased their ownership, and therefore we formally merged, S-Power merged into AES. Now we're part of the Aas Corporation, and now it's a business unit called AES Clean Energy. And happy to answer any questions on that. The important point to note is the announcement or the impact of the merger does not affect the timeline of the project. As a matter of fact, the original developers of the project have joined the AES Clean Energy team in New York, so we ensured continuity. And I can tell you that there's we were looking for significant investment in the New York market, and this project is a key important part of that. Next slide, please. So Aas Corporation, it's a Fortune 500 publicly listed multinational power company. I think it's the only multinational power company that's actually headquartered in the United States. The mission of the company, accelerating the future of energy together. And also we are consistently looking for climate solutions and directing the impacts on the climate. This is a publicly listed company, so therefore there's annual reports and SEC filings for the publicly listed company. Next slide, please. AES Clean Energy is a business unit of Aas Corporation. It's approximately about 500 employees. And as you can see here, it has a significant portfolio of renewable energy projects. Those projects consist of the sun logo is the solar, the wind logo is wind turbines, and then there's batteries is the voltage symbol there, and then the combined solar and storage. And similar to this project that Brett will get into and talk about New Bremen, this is going to be a solar plus storage project. You can see the clean energy portfolio across the United States is over 17 gigawatts, which is a tough number to get your head around. It's a significant number of projects across the United States. In New York, the operating portfolio is over 160 megawatts of solar, and our development portfolio is almost 2 gigawatts. We're looking forward to continuing to invest in New York, and particularly in a economic recovery from COVID. We want to be a key player in that, and we're looking for significant, obviously, local investment, like projects like the New Bremen project. Next slide, please. I'll hand it to Brett. Talk about the solar project overview for New Bremen.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, this is Brett Hastings, and as Mike mentioned, I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to continue working on the New Bremen solar project, as well as several other projects that are going to continue to be developed by AES in New York. I've been involved with building renewable energy projects for over 15 years, and I actually live in a wind park in Bliss, New York. I've been working specifically on the New Bremen project for over 2 years, and I'm happy to say that we're all really very lucky to have the ability to work with AES, because not only are they motivated to develop and design projects, but also to follow through and build and operate them, which is a process that we're more familiar with and supportive of, because it requires bigger commitment to outreach and building of long-term relationships in the community. So not everyone is as excited for us to be here as we are, and we completely understand that. It's one of the many reasons we are here tonight, is to help you all understand that AES is committed to making sure we can answer your questions and help as many people as possible feel comfortable that the New Bremen solar project will be a beneficial project, not only for the environment, which is the main reason we're here, but also for the community here in New Bremen, and where the conditions are extremely favorable for a project like this. Next slide, please. All right, so the New Bremen solar project is a 100 megawatt solar project, and that's photovoltaic solar panels. So when the sun's shining bright in the sky, at one point in time, it will have a capacity of 100 megawatts, and be injecting that onto the local grid. We're also, which is different from our last May's presentation, we're looking at entering 20 megawatts of energy storage. So that's being considered, and prior to submitting our application in the late summer, we'll make this decision. But I definitely wanted to talk briefly about the addition of energy storage to this project, because as research and development in the renewable industries has increased, it's becoming more and more apparent that storage is becoming a major component of these types of projects, moving forward. So, as all we know, renewable energy resources are intermittent by nature. When the sun's shining, it's producing energy. When the sun's down, it's not. And that said, filling the gaps between these cycles of wind and sun, become very important to the stability of the grid. So the world's working to decrease the use of CO2 emitting electricity generators, including things like peaker plants. And as a result, we have this new need to fill those gaps. And it's difficult to really list all the reasons we've based our storage decision, but just for a few, one of the more important reasons, AES has made a huge commitment to storage and has a team that focuses specifically on it. And we're extremely confident that storage can be a very safe and essential piece of this project and other projects, especially considering the goals we're reaching for under the climate action plans in New York and around the country. A 20 megawatt unit will take up approximately an acre or two of space near the substation, and it'll be installed in compliance with all the local, state, and federal regulations. Both economically and electrically, this is way more efficient to have many distributed energy storage units attached to the grid rather than, say, one gas peaker plant. It's more instantaneous startup, quite a bit more efficient to build too. We'll have 24/7 monitoring of the units and automatic control of the output if any issues present themselves. And, more importantly, or most importantly, we'll be working directly with the local EMS and fire departments with regard to safety plans and an emergency response that goes with it. As you can see in the map, this is located in the town of New Bremen in Lewis County. And well, we'll get into the point of interconnection. The point of interconnection we're connecting to is a 115 kV national grid line. And it's approximately 1,000 acres. And there's some fantastic environmental benefits to this project. It's 130 metric tons of CO2 emissions that will be reduced, and while we'll be powering 16,500 homes. We're looking to be operational by the end of 2023. And I think that pretty much covers that. Why don't we go to the next slide? Yeah, good. So this is a timeline that it's very shortened and summarized for us. The development phase on the left, we've been in that for over 2 years. And I guess a quick summary of what we've done so far is coming into an area, we assess the land in the area, the transmission line, and the law. So we preliminarily assessed the local transmission system for adaptability and capacity. And once we found a good transmission system that could take the capacity, then we reached out to landowners in the area of the potential interconnection point and had conversations with town leaders and assessed everyone's interests and concerns with the actual solar project. For a solar project to be sited, you need fairly flat land, and this is the area at New Bremen that we selected for this that had the good interconnection. So, we reviewed the town solar law to ensure that the project could be built responsibly within the town of New Bremen. And we had all positive feedback from the initial reviews. And I'm happy to say that we've been engaged with landowners and town leaders all along the way. Not as much as we would have liked to last year based on COVID, but virtually we had a lot of great interactions. Lewis County has several great locations for solar development, based on the terrain, as I discussed earlier, and cover and accessibility transmission, as well as the fact that laws have been adopted in some towns that allow for that responsible development. Also, the county IDA has proactively taken some steps to minimize the amount of prime agricultural acreage being used by creating some incentives to build on alternate lands. And as a matter of fact, as a part of our siting process that I discussed briefly earlier, we look to minimize impacts to many environmental resources. One of them is prime farmlands. But not only do we try to minimize our impact in prime farmlands, but there's forested areas, wetlands, areas of historical significance, just to name a few. But as a result, we feel we're able to build an efficient, safe, and productive project in this project area in New Bremen within the project developed area. So environmental studies, these are also part of the development phase. Rachel will touch on all of these studies that we've been through, all the ones we're implementing currently, and also ones we'll be performing pre-application and moving throughout the life of the project. It's important to note that these studies aren't all just one and done. We'll be continuing to assess and monitor our impacts to the environment in an attempt to ensure we continue to improve it. Also, we hire very experienced consultants like TRC and Young Summer to ensure that we get quality, unbiased information. And these guys have had to manage the line between, developers like us and the agencies and the DEC and landowners, and they do a fantastic job. And they've been doing that for many years. And we're happy to have the opportunity to partner with them and work with them. So engineering, design, and layouts have been. We've done many iterations of that, and I'll be sharing our latest iteration of that shortly with you on one of our other slides. So that's the development phase. We'll be looking to submit our application, the 94C permit application, later this summer. And then starting construction towards the end of 2022, we have Q4 up there. That means October, November, December, that time of year. There's only so much we can do over the winter. We recognize that, but that's when we're looking to try to start construction so that we can be in operations. They call it COD or will be in commercial operations. It's our commercial operations date by the end of 2023. If you go to the next page, I can show you a preliminary project layout. So this is a result of all of the studies that I discussed in the past, all of our conversations with landowners. We've had many wetland delineations done. We've had some archaeological studies done and some geotechnical surveys done to understand what subsurface looks like, and take that into account. We try to reduce prime agricultural impacts as much as we can, minimize the impacts of wetlands as much as we can, and essentially this is what the layout comes to after that, and then many setbacks that Jessica will talk about a little bit later, from boundaries, borders from non-participating folks and from homes, visual impacts. Many impacts have been calculated into this preliminary layout here. The transmission line runs right through the middle of the project, so connecting a connecting substation and the energy storage unit can be located away from the roads and residences to reduce visual impacts and help us stay in compliance with sound related regulations. Vegetation it's mostly reverting ag and a little bit of ag, along with some brush and some emerging forests. And at this point, we don't anticipate a major impact prime ag in this selected area. Also, I wanted to note that we're working proactively with the president and trail coordinators of the local snowmobile clubs, and we will work to ensure that we mitigate any trail breaks at all, and try to work together with those clubs to ensure that folks can make it through. I guess that's it for the project layout. If you want to slip to the next slide, I'll just talk briefly about some economic benefits. This is a $150 million capital investment, and as a result of that, that means could be over $9 million in estimated tax-related and benefits. We modeled this over the first 20 years just to draw a line in the sand, but Lewis County, the New Bremen School District, and as well as the town of New Bremen and the special districts in the area will receive these benefits. And it's important to note that we don't require any additional services. So we don't need any sewer connections. We plow our own access roads, and we don't send kids to school. We don't burden the schools at all. We handle our own electrical collections. Just a few examples there. So this added tax revenue will be provided to the community without any associated burdens that typically come as a result of new developments. Pursuant to 94C regs and just our general practice, there'll also be host community benefits that we'll be working on with the town, schools, and the county. And an interesting example of a new benefit that's come up that's been enabled by this new process is a $500 per megawatt per year electrical utility bill credit. And basically, that winds up being $500,000 over 10 years of electricity credits distributed among the residential utility customers in the New Bremen area for that 10 years. I'd like to talk a little bit about full-time jobs. There could be 2 to 3 full-time technical or management jobs when we're under operations, along with the many development, environmental, and pre-construction study workers during the first couple of years of the project. More of a short-term benefit to the local community is during construction. There could be 150 plus construction workers in the area, all spending money at the local hotels and restaurants and diners and coffee shops, hardware stores for a full construction season, or maybe more, depending on how long it takes to or when we get started on the project. So there's a lot of long-term benefits associated with this capital investment, tax-related benefits, as well as short-term benefits associated with the construction and development of the project. That said, I think what we'll do now is hand it over to Eric to go over a few more items.
Thanks, Brett. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Eric Will. I'm a lifetime resident of Central New York. I live down in the Syracuse area, and I've been involved with the New Bremen Solar Project, like Brett, since its beginning over 2 years ago. The project's transition to AES ownership has been, I would say, a pretty seamless one for us, and hopefully for our landowners and stakeholders too. I'm comfortable saying this because the community-oriented culture, which we knew before, and which is so important, hasn't changed from company to company. AES is very committed to being a good neighbor, and we plan on being fully engaged with Lewis County and the town of New Bremen for many, many years. We'll always welcome opportunities to interact with property owners, schools, public officials, and community organizations, and we'll be receptive to things like sponsorship and partnership opportunities, as well as giving site tours and presentations. We like to think of a utility scale solar installation as a community asset that can be used very effectively to promote clean energy awareness and education. In addition, our public involvement program plan that we filed under Article 10 will continue to be our roadmap for public engagement. That plan in 2020 resulted in a lot of stakeholder interactions. Unfortunately, not many were in-person meetings, but that's finally begun to change. Recently, it's been great to meet a number of people in person, and that just makes a huge difference. The last point on this slide emphasizes our desire to be especially supportive of economic development and environmental initiatives, plus STEM education. AES is the first renewable energy company in the US to join companies like Microsoft, Boeing, and Procter & Gamble in Discovery Education's STEM Careers Coalition. We're very committed to engaging in these kinds of programs that'll help connect kids, students, to STEM careers and offer professional development to their teachers too. Next slide, please. A year ago, when the project was still owned by National Grid Renewables, we held our first New Bremen Solar virtual community meeting. So tonight's our second one. Over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of meetings with area landowners, both those participating in the project as well as those who aren't. In addition, we've had communications with town board members, county officials, and it's great to be able to talk with all of you tonight. We've had quite a few opportunities to discuss this project with various community stakeholders, and you can see a few of them listed on this slide. Last year, we provided information about the project to the Lewis County Farm Bureau, and more recently had a chance to meet with the folks at Lewis County Economic Development. We've joined the Lewis County Chamber of Commerce and hope this affiliation may help us get to know the community better and really engage. Also, as Brett mentioned earlier, we'll definitely have meetings with the local first responders to develop the necessary emergency response plans. And in the spirit of trying to interact with as many organizations as possible, the project information was shared some time ago with both the Adirondack North Country Association and the Development Authority of the North Country. Finally, since it's really important that we want to use local construction labor to the greatest extent possible and pay prevailing wages. And we've had conversations with several labor organizations, including IBEW Local 910, the New York State Laborers, and the Regional Council of Carpenters. And I have to say, in all cases, we've been really impressed with their commitment to training their members in the various phases of constructing a solar generation installation. Certainly, there are other organizations and agencies that we'll want to engage with, so this type of interaction is definitely going to be an ongoing process. Next slide, please. Finally, we always like to encourage folks to make community engagement a two-way street. We really do welcome your input and hope you never hesitate to reach out to us. You'll notice on this slide, there's a lot of ways to do that. We have a dedicated New York toll-free number. The project has an email address and a website and real people that you can speak with who hold virtual office hours twice a week at the toll-free number. Also, when we get to the last slide of this presentation, you'll see not only my email address, but my cell phone number. I believe in being available to you, and when I'm not, I can assure you I'll get back to you promptly. So with that said, I'd like to turn this over now to Jessica Clamy, our permitting counsel with the Young Summer Law Firm located over in Albany, to give you a New York State regulatory overview. Jessica?
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Clamy. I'm an attorney from the law firm of Young Summer in Albany, New York. Young Summer is permitting counsel for New Bremen and assisting the project through the permitting process. I have been involved in permitting and development of numerous renewable energy projects, both under Article 10, which is the state's previous large-scale energy siting process, and now under the new 94C process. Tonight, I'm here with you to talk about the state permitting process known as Section 94C. The New Bremen Solar Project is what is known as a major renewable energy project and is required to obtain permission to construct and operate from the state, from the Office of Renewable Energy Siting, or ORES. Section 94C replaces Article 10 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act, otherwise known as SEQR. And 94C requires a comprehensive assessment of potential environmental impacts as part of the review. You can go to the first slide. So under Section 94C, a siting permit is issued by the newly created Office of Renewable Energy and Siting within the New York State Department of State. Permit decisions are made by the executive director or his or her designee, and the regulations provide additional details on the process. Were issued for public comment in September 2020. Hearings were held on those draft regulations, and comments were received until December. And the final regulations came out not that long ago, in March 3rd, 2021. The hallmark of Section 94C is its uniform standards and conditions, which recognize the similarity of potential impacts and standards for all large-scale renewable energy projects, and comes together to create a set of standards to minimize those impacts across all the projects. The USCs establish kind of the rules of the game up front and allow developers to design their projects in conformance with standards identified to protect human health and the environment. In addition, for projects where there is unique or different circumstances, ORES has the ability to create site-specific conditions, and those are also placed in the permit. In addition, the uniform standards and conditions require a number of pre-construction compliance filings, plans, and other details to be filed to ensure construction, if approved, proceeds safely and also minimizes impacts. Go to the next slide. This is an overview of the 94C process. You'll see the first red box, so that's the you are here indicator. As you saw highlighted on the last slide, part of the process involves pre-application consultations, which we're currently engaged in, both on the local level and with state agencies. These consultations have been ongoing and will continue until we file the application. The application is anticipated to be filed late summer, early fall. So you can see we go on to our next slide. Once that is filed, intervener funding becomes available, and people have about 30 days to file. Well, they have 30 days to file after the application is submitted. During that same time frame, there is a completeness review period that lasts 60 days. After the 60 days, ORES will either issue the draft, do their completeness review, and they will either ask that the applicant submit additional information or will deem the application complete. From there, there was another 60 days, and then ORES will issue draft permit conditions. There will be a public comment period, and during this time of public comment, there's also an opportunity for parties to submit issue statements, to request party status, and for the local municipality to submit their statement of compliance with local laws. Once all of that information is submitted, there will be an ALJ assigned to the case, and they will review the statements that have come in and determine if there are any issues raised by any parties which require hearings, and those are called substantive and significant issues. If hearings are required, the ALJ will schedule the hearings. Once the hearings are held, the ALJ will issue a recommended decision and hearing report, and ultimately the final decision by ORES has to be issued within 1 year after the completeness determination. Following a decision on the permit, the applicant is required to make what are known as compliance filings, which include final design plans and other plans prior to commencing construction. And there's an opportunity for the state to review and approve these plans. Once all the plans are approved, there will be an authority for the project to go into construction, and construction will commence. At that point, actually the Department of Public Service in conjunction with ORES will oversee construction and compliance. Next slide. In making decisions whether to grant the siting permit, ORES must consider local laws, and unless the local laws are set aside as unreasonably burdensome, the ORES permit will require the applicant to comply with these applicable local laws. Again, similar to Article 10, the state's previous siting process, in considering whether local laws are unreasonably burdensome, ORES must consider the state's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act targets for the development of renewable energy and the environmental benefits of the projects. Municipalities have a number of roles in the process. In addition to the pre-application consultation, municipalities can also submit a statement of compliance with local laws following the issuance of the draft permit, whereby the municipality can provide ORES its view as to whether or not the local laws the host municipality seeks to enforce and whether the project is designed in conformance with applicable substantive standards. To assist municipalities in the review, there is intervenor funding, $1,000 for every megawatt, and 75% of that funding is reserved for municipalities. Anybody seeking intervenor funding has 30 days to apply from the date of the application filing, and there are many opportunities for New Bremen to let the community know the application is being filed, to give them a heads up in case anyone does want to file for that intervenor funding. Okay, next slide, please. As you can see here, there are 25 exhibits that make up 94C. It is very, very comprehensive. Some on the line may have been familiar with the Article 10 process, and you may think, well, there were more exhibits there, but in actuality, Article 10 was for all energy, not just renewable energy, and there were lots of exhibits that were not related to renewable energy. So although it may look like less exhibits, there's actually more information and more things in here that are fine-tuned for renewable energy projects. So it is very comprehensive, and although the first application hasn't been submitted yet, I am sure it will be volumes once we're done. So not only will it have these 25 exhibits, but there will probably be hundreds of appendices and information for people to digest. Okay, on to the next slide. In addition to, well, not in addition to, because it's part of the exhibits on the previous slide, but one of the things that all projects are required to do is site restoration and decommissioning. And so Exhibit 23 requires the applicants to come forward with a decommissioning and site restoration plan that details all of the things that the applicant would do if they had to decommission the site, or in other words, remove the site. So in that, they also have to come up with the cost to remove. And as part of the final pre-construction compliance filings, they'll submit the final decommissioning cost, and you will have to obtain a letter of credit or other suitable financial security for the towns to hold on the slim chance that the towns would actually need to do the decommissioning. And this is to protect the community, to make sure that if something were to happen, there is money available to take down the site and to properly decommission so that no one is left holding the bill other than the developer. Next slide, please. Okay. So I mentioned one of the items we discussed with the town during the pre-application consultation is compliance with local laws. Solar and energy storage are permitted uses in the town, and the town of New Bremen has enacted zoning provisions addressing large-scale solar projects and has enacted standards for glare, height, setbacks, and screening requirements, among other provisions. You know, we have worked with the town when they enacted the law, and we are continuing to work with the town to design to comply with all applicable local laws in the town. There are a few instances in specific situations where we may need to look closely, for example, setbacks and how they apply, and work with the town to get an interpretation on how the law is being applied and how this would impact the design. And if for any reason there was a substantive provision of the local law that could not be worked around, we would work closely with the town if we needed to seek any sort of waiver from ORES. But we are working to design the facility to comply with the town's local law. Okay, next slide, please. And lastly, for my segment tonight, this is an overview of the intervenor funding, which I've talked about a lot. When the application is filed, additional funds will be made available, and the application submission details are listed at the bottom of this slide. So, you know, you have 30 days. ORES really wants them to, they have the form on their website. They want you to use that form and submit online. But if you need to print out or you need to do anything to request the funds, you can also mail to the mailing address on the screen. Okay. I believe that is my last slide. And now I'm going to turn over, I believe, to Rachel to provide an overview of the extensive studies and evaluations that go into the permitting application for the project.
Thank you, Jessica. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Silva. I'm a project manager with TRC as the environmental permitting consultant for the new Bremen Solar Project. I work in TRC's West Seneca office in the Buffalo area. To expand upon what Jessica has just done a great job going over, I'm going to briefly discuss some of the studies and analyses that are required to complete the 94C permitting effort. Some of these studies have already been initiated and completed, and some of them will occur during field work that's scheduled throughout the next year. Next slide, please. During the 2020 field season, TRC completed wetland and stream delineations within the project area. In total, 20 wetlands and 8 streams were identified within the project area. If you do a little quick math here, you may notice that the different wetland types sums up to more than 20, and that's just the different wetland types within individual wetlands. Upon completion of the wetland delineation report, which consolidates all of this compiled data, TRC submitted this report to ORES for review, and we actually just recently completed a site visit with ORES's consultant to verify these delineations. As stated on this slide, our goal for this project is to avoid and minimize impacts to these important resources. And the next slide shows a map of some of the delineated resources within the project area from those field studies. And circled to the west actually also is an additional area where we may be extending our delineations and resource surveys this year. Next slide, please. In addition to wetland and stream delineations, you may have seen our field staff either in the early summer hours or late evening hours of the winter conducting breeding bird surveys and winter raptor surveys. TRC conducted breeding bird surveys between May and July 2020 in accordance with the New York State DEC protocol issued for these types of surveys. In addition, TRC completed winter raptor surveys at the project as well, both during the 2019-2020 and the 2020-2021 winter field seasons. and updated survey results and reports are in progress for the most recent studies that will be submitted to ORES and the agencies. Next slide, please. As far as visual impacts and landscaping, we will be completing viewshed analyses for the New Bremen Solar Project. This will include photo simulations demonstrating what the project would look like with the existing landscape. And both the viewshed analyses and photo simulations will be included in the visual impact assessment, which will be included in the extensive application that Jessica had just outlined previously. This will also include a glare analysis. In addition to visual analyses, TRC will complete a landscape plan for the project to support visual screening and mitigation. And generally speaking, in that landscaping plan, we'll utilize a mix of coniferous and deciduous species and primarily select native. These next slides show first an example of preliminary viewshed mapping. And second, this particular slide is project specific, and these are some viewpoint locations and existing visual resources. Next slide, please. Here we have a representative viewpoint from, I believe this is along State Route 812 facing northeast. So this type of photo then would be utilized potentially with photo simulations to kind of give an idea if the project was visible from this vantage point, what it would look like. Next slide, please. Moving on to sound. Solar farm noise impacts are studied as a part of the permitting process. However, sound that's created by solar projects is pretty minimal. The inverters can only be heard when you're standing very close to them. And this slide shows a few of the interesting looking devices that our field team used to perform the sound study. There's a sound meter on the left, and I believe an anemometer on the right, which measures wind speed. That's also a component of the sound monitoring. Sound associated with solar, as I mentioned, is very minimal. You could see on this next slide. On this scale here, in addition to, this shows some more kind of typical sounds. And you can see by comparison, really, a solar facility sound heard from a residence is really just above a whisper at 3 feet. Next slide. So I realize I didn't cover each of the studies in detail, just an hour-long presentation, but we're completing all of the studies as required to support the permitting of this project. But I just wanted to capture a few of those in the interest of time. And if there are any other studies or questions just in regards to those resources that folks have a question on, just please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel, and everyone who presented. We are now moving into the Q&A section, and our first question is, can I see the intervenor funding slide and information again? So yes, you may.
Yeah. Jessica, do you want to just elaborate on that one more time?
Sure. So slide is kind of gives you the breakdown of exactly what it is and where to apply, and potentially maybe the question is just so you can copy down this information, but it is also on ores.ny.gov. If anybody has any questions, you can go to ORES's website and they have the intervenor funding information right there. But there will be, with the filing of the application, New Bremen is required to submit $1,000 per megawatt, which will be available. 75 of the funds are reserved for municipalities, and the remaining funds are for community participants who can request funding to participate in the process.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. So far that's our only question of the evening. We do have the questions that were, oh, there's another one. Will there be any incentives for neighboring properties?
That's a good question. There will incentives. I don't know if there's going to be any incentives for neighboring properties, but there are some benefits. Obviously the benefits I spoke of earlier that impact the community. Also, the $500 per megawatt per year electrical residential utility bill credit that will be spread out through the community, and actually that credit is spread out through the entire community and will be a credit to residential electricity users and will last for 10 years and be credited every year. Hope that helps.
I mean, I would interject that certainly to the extent that people have issues with something like viewshed, we will listen to everybody's concerns as we develop our landscaping plan for the project.
That's a great point, Eric. And also to reiterate what Eric had said earlier too, if anybody has any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out directly to us. We'd be glad to sit down with you, in your kitchen or your back porch or just over the phone. So let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you all. Next question is, are there Google Earth or GIS maps available? The questions are kind of together. So where are the boundaries?
Good. So probably if you wouldn't mind, Stephanie, cruising back to the project outline, the map, there you go, the project layout. So there aren't any KMZs or GIS maps available at this point. This is a preliminary map that we'll be working on. Eventually, when we submit the application, that'll all be publicly available. Typically, we work with the local towns to build a map of the final layout and provide that to the town so that can be put up at the town building, the town clerk's office. And the boundaries, I guess, if you think about Route 126 being sort of our northern boundary, and certainly not as far as 812 to the south, but some of the roads that dissect our project are cut off in Venus and the Arts Road, and it kind of ends up on the western side on the Van Amber Road. It's kind of a long and narrow project area, and just as a point of note too, the panel locations have fence lines that just go around the portions rather than the actual whole project area. So in the past, we've had folks ask about wildlife. There's plenty of room for them to get around, and there are some slots that are created underneath the fences to allow certain species to cruise through, and the fences are typically about 7 feet tall. That was a little more information, but hopefully that covered the question.
Thank you very much. There was a quick follow-up question to that before we move on to the ones in the Q&A. Can we see the map on this slide so that we can zoom in?
Yeah, I think we brought that one up on the slide. Is that the slide that everybody's seeing right now? The preliminary project layout? I think so.
Yeah, I think they may be asking about, like, will we have access to the slides so that we can zoom in ourselves?
Oh, I understand.
This presentation.
So I apologize.
I'm guessing.
I did. Yep. No, that's a good point. And so yes, and Neely, I think you talked about it earlier that this presentation will be put up on the website. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to contact us.
Yes. Thank you, Brett. Next question. How will this affect my property value once this is up and running?
It's a great question. So there haven't been any of these larger projects built in New York State due to the permitting process. It's a cumbersome process. It takes a little while. So we're leveraging some real estate reports that have been done in other states, as well as some of the wind facilities that have been done in our state. These projects have shown, no diminishing returns to the current values. In some places, the values have gone up depending on how the towns utilize the incentives, the pilot payments and host community agreement payments. I personally live, as I mentioned earlier, in the middle of a wind park, and our property values, if anything, they increased in value based on the improvements that were made in the town as a byproduct of the project. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to kick in on that, but I think that covers it.
All right. Thank you, Brett. Next question. When will a specific plan showing the impacts to the view shed be available?
Yeah, so I'll take the beginning of this again. I don't mean to be greedy here. Rachel, you could touch on this a little bit too if you want, but Rachel talked a little bit about it. We create a visual analysis. That visual analysis, the locations where we take those pictures, we'll take it to the town, have them review the locations to make sure that we're encompassing all of their concern areas, and then we'll do some visual impact simulations at a couple of the locations to show the viewshed impacts, and those will have the visual simulation with and without landscape plans, and we'll also be working on the actual landscape plan itself and showing that as well to the town.
Okay, thank you, Brett.
Yeah.
Next question. How close to the road will the panels be?
Jessica, maybe you can talk to the setbacks.
Yeah, I can talk to a little bit about the setbacks. I believe both the New Bremen local law and 94C have setbacks from local roads, and I think they're anywhere between 50 and 75 feet. Under 94C and others, so the actual panels will be set back that much, but visual screening and the fencing may be closer.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Those are all the questions we have for now. If you have any, we'll be wrapping up in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, actually, let me just throw this in here too, Neely. And if anybody comes up with any questions, we call them taillight questions. Like as soon as we turn down the road and pull away, you see the taillights, and you remember that question you had. Again, feel free to reach out to us, and cell phone numbers and email addresses are there.
Thanks, Brett. And we also, you will receive a survey for tonight's event, virtual community meeting. We'd love to have your feedback on how we did. We've gotten some really valuable feedback from the previous ones we've done for some other projects, and have incorporated that into what we do. So please share thoughts. And I think with that, we will wrap up the evening. Again, if you have further questions, reach out to Brett and Eric, send us an email to the project website, project email, I should say. And I hope everyone has a lovely, lovely evening.